Hey, this is Chris Bell with the Gulf Coast Symphony, and I have the great honor today of sitting down with Maestro Paul Nadler and getting to talk a little bit about an upcoming concert we have on March 3rd. And he's going to come and guest conduct, and it's something we're really excited about. It's an honor for me to get to sit here and talk with him, but also for the orchestra to get to play for you. So I guess my first question is, coming in and getting to guest conduct for us, take me through what it's like to come in, only have a few rehearsals with an orchestra, new members, whatever it may be, and then put on a great symphonic work like Brahms.
Well, any orchestra has its own kind of DNA. Orchestras work with their music directors. The very best orchestras in the world have been molded by their music directors into highly polished orchestras. And there are, of course, many orchestras that are in process of becoming better and need inspiration and tweaking and work to establish their full potential. So in 4 or 6 rehearsals, generally speaking, the first rehearsal or two will be getting acquainted with the music and the style of the new conductor, and the conductor getting to know the orchestra and its potentials. And the last rehearsal or two is just polishing and bringing the orchestra to its the best result that it can be. And the middle rehearsals, in general, are the working rehearsals where you really get inside. Now, that's not always the case specifically, but that in a general sense, that's what happens.
Speaking about the kind of shaping that the conductor has on an orchestra, do you feel like when you come in and guest conduct, like there's a fingerprint of if there's a conductor who's been there for a long time, do you really kind of feel his mark and his fingerprint on that orchestra?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes. If it's a very great orchestra, like the top 10 orchestras in the world, you know the history of the orchestra and you know who's molded it. You know, if you've come into a situation where you don't know the orchestra at all, or you don't have a sense of it, that first rehearsal is a get-together, a get-acquainted rehearsal where, as I said, you see the potential of the orchestra, you see who's especially strong or where things need work, and you devise a plan for the rest of the rehearsals. It can be quite instinctive, or it can be quite conscious, exactly what you're going to do to get the orchestra up to where it needs to be.
Got it. And you've had over 60 performances with the Met Opera,
I have.
Which is just incredible.
Yes, it is.
And I know that you've conducted operas all over the world. And so what's the difference between coming in and conducting opera compared to conducting a symphony?
Opera is a form that's like on steroids. It's a big kind of event, and generally speaking, when you're in an opera house, you're dealing with a large facility, a large place to work. The stage can be quite large. At the Met, for instance, it's huge, and sometimes you hardly see the people at the back of the stage.
Wow.
Now, there are TV monitors in many or most theaters these days, so that the people at the back of the stage, or even if they're in the front of the stage but they are at an angle, they can look at the monitor instead of directly at the conductor, and that provides some sort of insurance for them, so that they don't have to be staring at the conductor, which is not appropriate in a drama where they're supposed to be relating to one another. But they'll look at the monitor and still be able to relate to the people on stage. But the sheer vastness of some of the opera houses is one of the daunting tasks. And there are a couple of others. You have stage directors who may or may not be especially sensitive to the musical values that are happening. And at times, more and more these days, I should say, directors will be having singers do things that are very physical, sometimes outlandish, but they like to involve singers in a much different way than the old style stand and sing, which may make better theater, but also makes it harder for a conductor to do his work, because they're very they're looking for something specific dramatically or physically from a singer, and the conductor has to deal with that and make sure that the result is still good.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sure. What's the most outlandish thing that you've seen a singer be directed to do?
Oh boy. I remember in a performance that I did, first of all, there was a moving turntable. It was in Barbara Seville, actually. And at one of the most difficult moments for the singer is the turntable started to move, which made it hard to see the angle that the conductor had to the stage, and vice versa from the stage down. And there was a trio in the Barbara Seville where, in a very inopportune moment, the stage director had the singers, I would say, flee to the back of the stage, which made it impossible for them to see in this very, very complicated music.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. And the other aspect of what's different about opera from symphony is that there are some styles of Italian opera mainly where the vocalism can be very florid or very free, and it makes it very hard for conductors. I mean, your metal is tested by the fact that you have to accompany when things are very loosely organized from the singer point of view. And they're absolutely right. It has to be florid and free, but then the conductor has to be very much on top of the situation. It's kind of akin to a Chopin piano concerto, where it's very florid and the pianist takes all the time in the world, and the conductor has to be right there with.
And you're just falling behind and.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, falling on time, hopefully.
Well, yeah, which actually means that I've discovered that you have to be slightly ahead with the beat in order for it to be actually ahead, because it takes a moment for the orchestra to respond. So there's a very subtle dance that goes on there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And so for this program that you're playing with us, we've got the Schubert's Rosamunde Overture, the Dvořák Symphonic dances, and
Yes.
am I right? It's 1, 3, and 8?
1, 3, and 8
1, 3, and
from the first set.
Got it.
Opus 46. Mm-hmm.
And then also Brahms Symphony No. 1,
Yes.
C minor.
Right.
And so take us through why you chose this program and if there's a common thread that kind of links all the pieces together.
Okay, well, there are 2 or 3 different kinds of programs. I'll just describe them briefly. The first is a program devoted to a single composer, or the second type might be a theme program where frequently a Romeo and Juliet, all the music written for Romeo and Juliet by Berlioz or Prokofiev or Tchaikovsky are done. And the third type might be a smorgasbord. That word just occurred to me. Mixed styles. And I've always tended toward the latter because it expands my repertoire, and because it's interesting to have little-known pieces reflect on, like, a war horse, like the Brahms first. So my thought in this program was, number one, to do things that the orchestra was acquainted with. Maybe some of them have played the Brahms a few times or many times. And so that we're starting from, they're not sight reading at the first rehearsal. And secondly, my idea was also to involve Central European music. Of course, Brahms was from northern Germany, but he chose Vienna as his adopted home. And Dvořák was Czech, but it was part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and Vienna was the capital. And Shubert was Viennese through and through. So it was my thought to do that. And the other interesting connection is through Brahms, that Brahms was a mentor to Dvořák. He heard some of Dvořák's, or saw some of Dvořák's music when he was judging a competition for composers. And he was very much taken with that music and helped Dvořák establish himself professionally. So that was an important connection between the two of them. And Brahms was very much in love with Schubert's music and edited some of the symphonies and made arrangements of Schubert's music. He was very much taken with Shubert. So Brahms is kind of the connecting force between the three of them.
Okay. Wow. And am I remembering right? Did Brahms, I've heard before that Dvořák's Slavonic dances were kind of inspired by, was it Brahms' symphonic dances?
He did Hungarian dances.
Hungarian dances, yeah.
Well, there was Dvořák was the great exponent of nationalism from Czech music. The latter half of the 19th century was the time when nationalism came into music more, and it was just a great fit for Dvořák. I mean, he just took to it wonderfully. So Brahms could very well have been the inspiration.
And with the Symphonic dances, I know there's 16 pieces within the whole opus, and so was there a specific reason why you chose 1, 3, and 8?
I love them.
You love them.
Well, there's a reason beyond that. There are 2 sets of 8 in each set, Opus 46 and Opus 72. Opus 72 isn't quite as spontaneous. Dvořák only wrote it after pressure from his publisher because the first set had been so wildly popular. The first set was one of the first things that Dvořák did, certainly after the competition that he won. And why I picked number 1, 3, and 8, besides the fact that I love the 3 of them, I love the number 3 particularly. I think it's just a glorious piece. And numbers 1 and 8 are like mirror images of one another and have some of the same performing problems. So if I was able to do number 1 particularly well, it would transfer over to number 8.
So as a conductor, do you feel like there's a group of instruments or a specific instrument that you have the most intense working relationship with?
Not really. The pieces of music come with a variety of problems, and certainly the Brahms one, everybody is involved. So I go where the work needs to be done, and I'll deal with the sections, whether it's the string sound or the power of the brass or the delicacy of the woodwinds or what I need from the woodwinds soloistically, whatever. But beyond that, the strings in an orchestra are the kind of the basis of the sound. And so one naturally goes to them first to establish a kind of baseline for how the orchestra sounds. The brass and the woodwinds have their own contributions to make in various ways. So I'll be talking to them in rehearsal for sure. But there was something else. Yes, and that's my own experience. I was a cellist and a flutist.
Wow.
Yes, and I was at a professional level, entry-level professional level, with both those instruments. So I have a more enhanced interest in the flute and in the cello section. But that won't make anybody nervous, I'm sure.
I'm sure. And what's something that you would like our audience to know about Schubert's Rosamunde Overture?
Just that it's an absolutely delightful piece, that Shubert was a spontaneous composer. He wrote as much in his 31 years as Mozart wrote in his 35, just overabundance of music. And it was just so natural for him to write. And he was kind of like a naïf in that respect. And this piece has a kind of brilliance and lightness to it which are infectious, and then people will, once the introduction is over, which sets off a contrast, then the whole piece is very ebullient and wonderful, and should bring a smile to everyone's face.
Even the musicians, right?
Especially the musicians.
Well, thank you for stopping by and talking with us. We're really excited for the concert. So March 3rd, Paul Nadler is going to guest conduct. We're going to have Brahms, Dvořák, and Shubert. And so it's a concert that you're not going to want to miss. Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.